The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
All right, good evening. Thank you. I'm Ed Zerker. I'm the city manager. It's my pleasure to be here. Councilman Stark should be here very shortly. She left a little before I did, but she took 7th Street and I took the freeway. So we figured out that the 51 works better at this time of night than the 7th Street does. And Councilman Waring stayed behind because he had a vote he had to take at the council, but he is on his way. So we're gonna get this started with the video, and by the time the video is over, we should all have gathered ourselves appropriately. We're glad you're here. This is a 2017-18 budget proposal. There are pamphlets that explain in a little bit of detail the budget. The video will explain a little bit of that. If you really want to know a lot more information, it's all online at phoenix.gov/budget. It's our privilege to be here. I would note that Will Novak is here from Mayor Stanton's office. We have Ashley Bunch here from Councilman Waring's office. I didn't check to see who we got from District 3, but I'm sure we got somebody. You're representing both, but the council members will be here. If you'd like to speak this evening, we'd like you to fill out a card, and when you speak, we'll ask you to come over here. That's so that it can be captured on video. It's played on YouTube, on the city's YouTube channel, and we take minutes so that all the council members can hear what it is you're doing. We have another hearing going on tonight at the same time, so we have some council members at another hearing as well. With that, we will watch the 10-minute video. Then we'll have time to hear from all of you. I want to thank our city staff who are here. They are here to answer questions and talk with you individually if you'd like afterwards as well. Thank you to our police officers who are here. And with that, we'll go to the video.
And welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2017-18 trial budget. The City of Phoenix wants to hear from you. Your ideas can help shape the budget each year. The final budget provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money on key services you want and need, like police, fire, transit, city parks and swimming pools, libraries, youth and education, graffiti prevention, arts and culture, and help for seniors, and how they all could be impacted. The 2017-18 Phoenix City budget is balanced as required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, the city is preserving the services our residents value. Out of the $1.2 billion general fund budget, there is a small $1.9 million surplus. This video will present proposals on how to use these funds. So here's how the city's budget breaks down. There are 3 sources: the general fund, enterprise fund, and special revenue fund. Let's start with the general fund. 3/4 of the general fund is for police, fire, courts, with the remaining 25% going for everything else like libraries, parks, senior services, arts, and administrative and support functions. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds come mostly from dedicated taxes that must be used for a specific purpose. For example, the Phoenix Parks and Preserves Initiative, also called 3PI, or Transportation 2050. That funding goes for transit, light rail, and streets. Under the strong leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced. Phoenix employees strive every day to work smarter, save money, and serve our customers. That includes making sound financial decisions, like keeping our credit rating strong, spending within our means, and looking for savings to use for important community services. Now let's take a look at the recommendations for additions to the budget for next fiscal year. In the general fund, there is a little less than $2 million extra, plus some opportunities to use funds differently to add service. First, adding 16 civilian police assistants. They will take over some administrative duties, freeing up officers so the officers can respond to emergency calls.
So adding police assistance to our existing staffing resources is going to do a couple of things. It's going to get our first responders back on those priority calls for service faster and increase our service delivery to our community.
Next, focusing on homelessness in our city. The plan is to create more outreach teams by eliminating 6 vacant positions in the Human Services Department. This would free up about $500,000 to send teams of outreach workers to homeless residents on the street to connect them with services and a place for shelter.
These services are critical to the city. These professional outreach teams will work hand in hand with our community partners, neighborhoods, police, to bring these really important services to a very vulnerable population.
For the library, there are 2 recommendations. Contract savings would make security at Burton Bar Central Library permanent, and the other is to create more opportunities to engage kids in educational programs. Now, that leaves about 1/3 of the surplus untouched. So the proposed budget calls for strategically setting aside that funding, about $641,000, into a rainy day fund. The intent is to offset a potential deficit in the 2018-19 budget, which was projected in the city's 5-year forecast. Okay, time now to get back to the 2017-18 budget proposals. Let's look at the enterprise funds. These services are funded with user fees, with the exception of the Phoenix Convention Center. The budget calls for putting a new emergency operations center and ambulance at Sky Harbor International Airport. This would ensure that if anyone at the airport needs medical attention, they can get to the hospital quickly from Sky Harbor. Next, the Solid Waste Funds pays for our trash collection and recycling services. It's proposed to add 8 positions to enhance worker safety and increase collections. Perhaps you've heard of the Reimagine Phoenix campaign. This is all part of support for the goal from mayor and council to divert 40% of what ends up in our landfills by the year 2020 through recycling, composting, and education. Okay, now to other restricted funds, which are dedicated to specific services. The Phoenix Parks and Preserve Initiative Fund comes from a 1/10 cent tax to support our world-renowned parks system. To support safe use of our parks and preserve system and public safety, the trial budget would add 22 new park rangers. This would extend trailhead hours and provide additional support at flatland parks around the city.
By adding rangers, we can extend the park hours at specific locations by 2 additional hours, which means that instead of hiking in the heat of the day, you can hike a little bit later. You can drive actually into the trailhead and continue your hiking later into the evening while it's still a little bit cooler.
13 of the new park rangers would be assigned to the city's more heavily visited locations, including North Mountain, Piestewa Peak, South Mountain, and other trailheads like Echo Canyon, Cholla, and Lookout Mountain. The other 9 would be assigned to flatland parks.
Additional rangers in our community and flatland parks provide that extra layer of customer service that we currently don't have, and it'll provide an opportunity for people to get education or learn more about what's going on in the parks and just provide that extra layer of enhanced customer service.
Also included would be funding to maintain 2 new dog parks, one at Reach 11 and the other at Deer Valley Park. From the Transportation 2050 funds, the budget calls for expanding service on some of the busiest routes around the city. It would also increase weekday midday frequency on routes serving Thomas and Camelback roads. And from the Development Services Fund, the proposal is to add several positions to keep up with increased building permits and inspections due to economic growth. Also, to increase and enhance communication and continue our efforts to streamline processes. One last important update is on the hiring of more police officers and firefighters. The city is on target to meet its recruiting goals of 3,125 officers and 1,615 firefighters.
This budget that we're talking about now includes the addition of roughly 250 officers next year, getting us to our sustainable goal.
So it's important for us to keep the public safe and live within our means. In 2009, our public safety funds were significantly in a deficit. To avoid layoffs and to balance the budget, we stopped hiring. By 2015, we were back, and we've been hiring police officers and firefighters since then.
While we're down from our peak level of staffing in the police department, we're also significantly down in our calls for service to the department. Over the last few years, as population and calls for service have increased, we're also fortunate to return to hiring officers.
So we've been recruiting in-state for a long time, but now we have that extra effort to be able to go out of state to recruit. What an amazing opportunity to increase the number of people that we find and can look for to build our staffing here in the Phoenix Police Department.
It allows a safe, effective response to whatever emergency is happening in the city of Phoenix. So whether it's a heart attack, if it's a house fire, structure fire, if it's a mountain rescue, is that by having 4-person staffing, it ensures adequate, safe response to meet whatever needs we encounter.
Now keep in mind, this year's budget hasn't been adopted just yet. Your input is important, and the City of Phoenix wants to hear from you on what the upcoming budget should look like. So to recap, a few highlights. The 2017-18 trial budget calls for 16 new police assistants to free up sworn officers from administrative work, 22 park rangers, which would allow some trailheads to be open longer during the summer, and reutilizing city resources to expand the city's homeless outreach. Again, this is a balanced budget with some money set aside as a head start for future use. 17 public hearings will take place this month across all council districts, and you are encouraged to attend. Make sure you pick up a budget pamphlet outlining all the proposals and options at any of the public meeting or online at phoenix.gov/budget. You can also send your comments or questions to budget.research@phoenix.gov, or to reach us by phone, please call 602-262-4800. You can also comment on social media by using #PhoenixBudget. Thank you for your interest in the City of Phoenix budget and being a part of the budget process.
Here we go. All right, we got it. So I have 7 cards. If there are people who would like to speak who haven't filled out a card, please fill one of those out. I'm pleased that we're joined tonight and hosted by Councilman Waring, Jim Waring of District 2, where we are, and Councilwoman Deborah Stark of District 3, which is very close by. And Councilman Waring and I both took the 51, and we found it to be more successful than 7th Street. So that was our own little test.
And thanks so much for all of you being patient. We had a very long council meeting today. We did not think it would be that long, and so we were a little late. But we're here to listen to you. We want to hear your comments. I think you've already heard, we're taking notes and we're recording this so that we can revisit all the thoughts and comments that we hear tonight. And I thank you very much for being here. And I thank you, Councilman Waring, for allowing me in your district.
Happy to have all of you. Yeah, Ed and I think we're right about I wouldn't have thought about 7th Street all the way up, so we took the 51 and it was a little more successful. So, well, thank you for coming to District 2. We appreciate that, Deb, crossing the insurmountable hurdle of like 1 street, and so we're happy to have you here. And so why don't we get Ed? You want to get started?
All right, we will start. Our first card tonight is from Guy Mickelson. And so Guy, if you speak here, there is a microphone there. Guy will be followed by Lewis Howley.
Good evening, everybody, and council persons. First of all, let me commend the City of Phoenix for continuing to have an open budget process, unlike some other units of government floating around these days. But this is always very helpful. I wanted to make 2 quick observations. Number one, I've been involved with the City of Phoenix Human Services Department, either on the Human Services Commission or contracting with them, representing the state of Arizona, or doing business with them with the Foundation for Senior Living. And I would tell you that your Human Services Department is all the way back to the days of Travis Williams in the late 70s, has operated with a great deal of compassion, efficiency, and dedication to the people of Phoenix, and a great sensitivity to the most vulnerable in this community. And I'm proud to still be on the commission, and I think our director, Mo Gallegos, is And I've known Mo for about 35 years. If you need videos on him, I probably have a few. He's just a wonderful guy. I also am been involved with Central Arizona Shelter Services for the last 33 years and helped start it back in 1983, 84, currently serving as treasurer. The homeless at Cass, as I said, we've been in business for about 33 years, a business that we would like to be out of. Last year we served calendar year 152,000 bed nights to 4,600 persons. Month of February was 837 unduplicated persons, of which 370 or 44% were 31 to 50, 245 or 29% ages 51 to 61, and about 10% 86 over the age of 62. There is about, of all of those clients, about 38% of all the clients during the course of the year left within 1 week. 64% left within 20 days, 73% left within 6 weeks, 27% stayed over, about 1,256 people, but we have 10% of the people, or about 458, that use 49% of the bed nights. And those that 49% bed nights is, it's 75,000 bed nights. And we see, as we drive around, we see people on street corners and so forth, and we're always wondering why can't we find them a place to stay? We've got to squeeze more people out of Cass, that group that's staying the longest. They're staying the longest because a lot of those folks don't have IDs, and we're working with other federal agencies and so forth to get them IDs. They're awaiting HUD certificates for housing, and those are at a premium. Affordable housing in general, long transportation routes, because these people don't have any means of transportation, is very difficult. There's mental health issues, and then also they're involved with other hearings and court processes. So we have all of that going on. Cass, as treasurer, we are continually working with insufficient cash, moving money around. There is no surplus, and we've increased our fundraising efforts, but we're running always about $300,000 of floating on a $6 million budget. And obviously costs have gone up, minimum wage, health insurance, utilities, and all of those costs of doing business. In the last 10 years, we've experienced about a 20% decline in support from the city of Phoenix. Not complaining, we understand the 2008 period and all of those things, but our partnership with the city has been strong and consistent. And I might note, I see several officers here today. I will tell you from personal experience, the police department downtown around the Human Services campus has been absolutely marvelous to work with, and smart to work with in terms of dealing with people that may not always be rational in a very calm and deliberate manner. So hats off to the police department for their continuing efforts to help us. Now, we continue to see homelessness as a challenge for all of us. And I noticed that we have an outreach program. That outreach program is going to bring more people into the Human Services campus, and we need to get more people out. So we're looking at, in terms of the Cass participation with the City of Phoenix, we're looking at operating funds and obviously some case managers, so we can get that 10% out and get our case management process from 50 to 1 down to the national standard of about 30 to 1. We very much appreciate the partnership that we've had with the city, the open dialogue, and look forward to continuing to provide a robust service program at Cass and good positive results for those who are homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you for all your years of work with Foundation for Senior Adult Living. Appreciate it. He did recognize we have our Human Services Director, Mo Gallegos, here, and also our Housing Director, Cindy Stotler, who works on many of the programs Guy mentioned. Lewis Howley is next, and Lewis will be followed by Tom Cummins. And I see they both want to talk about library hours, and our library director is here, Rita Hamilton. So, Lewis.
Hello, my name is Lewis Howley, and I'm a resident of Phoenix, and I'm also the president of the Friends of the Acacia Library in Sunny Slope. I like to say that Acacia Library is small but mighty in its impact on the community. Our Friends group has budgeted this year over $6,000 for programs to support the library. One of our most recent projects that we funded in collaboration with the library is our seed library. Currently, we have about 30 packets of seeds checking out every day. Kids are asking their parents if they can check out seeds and grow things. Teachers are checking them out to use with their students in classrooms, and customers are showing library staff pictures of the plants they've grown. There are over 50 different kinds of seeds available, mostly vegetables, herbs, and a few fruit, cantaloupe, for example, and watermelon. And so I want to thank the city this year for providing us with an electronic calendar of events display, which, to my knowledge, has not been at Acacia Library ever, but who knows. And I also want to advocate as a member of the Friends of the Library for longer hours for the library. In particular, at Acacia Library, we're closed Sundays and Mondays. And in particular, on Sundays, that's a day when a lot of people could use the library. Every day that the library is closed is a day that the resources inside that library, such as the public access computers, cannot be used. And so I just want to make that pitch, even though I know next year is going to be a tight budget year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lewis. How do people check seeds back in?
They don't.
Okay. Lewis followed by Tom Cummins, and Tom will be followed by Ken Crane.
Well, first of all, thanks for being here and serving the public. I know it's probably a thankless job. But I'm just here to advocate for the restoration of the hours in our library. I know 2008, everybody knows it was a financial, roller coaster. And my understanding from speaking with people at the library, the budget at that time was around $40 million. It was cut to $35 million. And, everyone's advocating for money for their various groups, but at some point, I think you have to consider restoring that. I mean, these facilities are owned by all of us, and I think we'd like to use them all the time. I don't think greatness was ever achieved on a part-time basis. And when you go there, I advise you to go there and you see these young kids running around with a book in their hand, thinking it's the greatest thing in the world. I mean, if we're going to solve problems in the future, those are the people that are going to do it. And I just think it's short-sighted. I applaud you for having a balanced budget. And like I said, I just think that I'm sorry. I'm not a public speaker, so I didn't have the mic in the correct place. And also, I have shorts on. My wife usually catches me before I get out of the house, but she didn't tonight. So like I said, I know you're vying for things for the airport, for the police and fire, but I think, not all at once, but maybe just start in that direction. If you can restore a little bit and each year bring the hours back. And as the gentleman there that first spoke, I mean, they're kind of interconnected because the people that are on the bottom of the economic spectrum and maybe outside right now, that's a valuable resource to them. We might take it for granted, but they probably don't own a computer. They may have a job that isn't the best job. They work 6 days a week and their day off is on Friday. Guess what? The library's closed. So I think there's more to it than just convenience. And that's all I have to say, and thank you, and have a good evening.
Thanks, Tom. We won't tell your wife to look on YouTube and see what's going on here. Ken Crane, and Ken will be followed by Frank Marino.
You guys should have got a bigger meeting room. So good evening. My name's Ken Crane. I'm a Phoenix police officer. I'm also the president of Phoenix Law Enforcement Association. I want us to talk about some manpower and staffing issues on the PD. The first thing I want to implore to you is just how big the city of Phoenix is. We cover 530 square miles. Anthem in the north to south of Ahwatukee. Tolleson in the west out to Tempe, Scottsdale. We have more land mass in the city of LA, interestingly. And as an anecdotal visual, we could fit the city of San Francisco inside the Maryville precinct and have 25 square miles left over in that one precinct. Just so you get an idea of what we're looking at. The community of Ahwatukee has a population of 70,000. Anytime it's policed by 3 members or 3 officers. Prescott's got 40,000 and has a 65-man police department. It takes a police department helicopter at normal cruise speed an hour to fly around the city, the perimeter. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking for size. We've taken a lot of manpower and staffing cuts over the years, almost 6 years and change with no hiring. Our detectives have been cut drastically. Motor officers have been cut drastically. Response times and priority 1 emergency calls are averaging 7 minutes. That means a lot of times are maybe 8, 10, 12, or 15 minutes to get to an emergency call in progress. And the city, their goal is to get manpower and staffing to 3125. It's an impressive number. It sounds impressive, but you have to realize it's 260 less than what we had in 2008. So in 9 years, has the city grown, has the population grown, have we increased with infrastructure, population, housing, et cetera? I think we have. We're pushing for a staffing level ratio of 2.5 officers per 1,000. That would give us a 4,000 person police department, which is really what we need for a city this size. It's an average staffing ratio. We're not asking for the moon. A lot of departments around the country staff at 2.8, 3, 3.2, 3.5, 4, and even higher than 4 officers per 1,000. 2.5 is reasonable. So, when we aren't properly staffed, 2 things happen. Safety of citizens is compromised, safety of officers is compromised. Officers run without backups, and you guys wait longer times for police to get there, okay? It's a two-pronged issue. We are trying to be good partners with the city. We realize it's a tough problem. We realize the city manager has a fixed amount of money to work with, okay? But it's the mayor and council's job to secure funding to appropriately staff the PD. So all we're asking for is that, and I'll wrap up here, all we're asking for from citizens is that you please contact your mayor and council. Please ask them to find the funding sources needed to appropriately staff the department. We'll stick around. My partner and I will stick around after the meeting's over. We got some real interesting handouts. We'll give them to anybody that wants them. It has a lot of the stats that we've talked about and even a little more. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ken. Frank Marino is next. While Frank's coming up, Barb Welch and Richard Welch did not wish to speak, but were commenting that they would like to have lights at Dog Park here in Paradise Valley Park. The park is very busy with pets, and people want to be able to go in the summer after dark when it's cooler. So I'll check with our Parks Department and see what the story is on lights at the dog park. Frank.
All right. I guess I got the microphone in the right position. I should know I used to be a DJ back in the day. Anyway, my name is Franklin Marino. First and foremost, I'm a resident of the city. My wife and I own a home up here in District 2. We pay taxes and we vote. And quite frankly, I believe that as a resident of the 6th largest city in the country, we're being shorted when it comes to police services. I'm also a city employee. I'm a 22-plus year veteran of the department. And I spent most of my career wearing a uniform, driving a marked vehicle, answering one of these, a police radio. So in other words, I was the guy who showed up at your home or business when you called 911 or the non-emergency number. I'm also the secretary of the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, which represents the rank and file officers and detectives that are out there doing the heavy lifting every day. Ken touched on a lot of points, so I'm not going to repeat what he said, but interesting thing that was brought up in the video is that the department is going to hire 16 police assistants, non-sworn civilian personnel that are going to help take up the slack on some of the call volume. Well, what you're not hearing is, and in my simple Passaic County tech math, 16 police assistants divided amongst the 7 precincts is going to give you 2 police assistants per precinct. So in the overall big scheme of things, when you're short almost 800 officers from where we need to be, while they're going to help, it's only going to be a partial solution. So the bottom line is, and we get it, the city's got to come up with the money. The police department needs to be staffed so that the citizens are safe, so that we're not taking 7 minutes to respond when someone's kicking your door or breaking into your business. And we also need to keep the officers out there safe, because they are waiting times, and it has to do with that 530 square mile footprint. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Frank is followed by Mark Robert Gordon, and he will be followed by David Jernigan.
Hello, council members. I want to speak here on behalf of the Friends of the Phoenix Public Art. It's a not-for-profit organization that was started to educate the public about the public art that is owned by the citizens of the city of Phoenix, and also to advocate on behalf of the city's Commission on the Arts. Last year, we came asking for restoration to our budget for maintenance of art that we own. This is something that we own. If you don't maintain what we own, whether it's a house or art or anything else, it doesn't maintain its condition. You have to put money into maintenance, you have to put resources into it and time, otherwise its value decreases. We appreciate so much that the restoration was made last year of $25,000. That brought our budget up to $75,000. However, the cost of maintaining the public's art, what we all own, is $100,000. We are asking this year for an increase of $25,000 to bring it to the needs that we currently have, which is $100,000. We know that there's other drains and pressures on the city's budget. We understand the economic times that we're in, but it's $25,000 that we're asking for to be added to the budget. It's a minimal amount considering what it is that we own and what duty we have to preserve what is the public's property here. So we would greatly appreciate, with all due respect to everything else that is pressing on the city's budget, that a $25,000 increase be made to the maintenance to our existing public art in the city of Phoenix. I want to state, we're not trying to take away anything from the other arts budget for our cultural programs for the city. We very much support that, as we support everything else that's not arts related in the city. That said, I come back to what we already own. We have a duty to maintain, and we are asking you for a $25,000 increase so that we can bring it to the $100,000 cost that is the annual budget that we need to maintain the art that is owned by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. David Jernigan is next, and David will be followed by the last card I have, which is Joseph Benesh.
Hi. I just came here on a whim. I thought I was just going to watch, but I had some questions at looking at this. I guess I should preface this. I'm a small business owner. I have a gardening service. I employ anywhere between 9 and 12 people, and all legal, by the way, and working very hard to follow the rules, which is very difficult to do in my particular market. So looking at budgets is kind of familiar to me. And I was looking at the proposals for the different, how much these things cost. And I was wondering, what is the percentage of, for instance, the park rangers, you're looking for $898,000 for 9 people, which comes to $99,000 a person. Now, I'm assuming you're not going to pay a park ranger $99,000. So what percentage, or does it vary by each position? Or, I mean, how do you break that down to know what that position pays?
So we have a schedule. On these things, when there are new positions like that, that number is all inclusive of their salary, their benefits, plus in the first year we have to buy vehicles and equipment, particularly when we're talking about police assistants and park rangers. There's going to be equipment that's going to go into that number first. But I can get you the specific breakdown of how much of that is wages and others.
Okay.
But I'll have to email that to you.
So in something like this park,
Park ranger, I would guess, would probably be in the $50,000 to $60,000 in salary range, but there are benefits that add.
Now, I guess my question from a working stiff is, why would you pay somebody $50,000 plus benefits? I mean, I own a small business, and there's some years I don't make $50,000 after it's all over and done with. And, I mean, quite honestly, I appreciate the police and they provide a valuable service. I would much rather all the money go to them than pay some person to walk around the park that isn't going to be able to enforce the rules anyways. I mean, just as a reasonable, practical thing, if you spend any time in our parks, the people that are causing the problems, the park ranger says, do this, they say no, so then they call the police, and the police say, hey, you have to leave, and then if the police get there in time, you might actually get something, but to spend that kind of money, it just doesn't seem very practical. And with all respect to the people that want lights for the dog park, I mean, why is it the citizens' responsibility to pay for lights for such a small percentage of people that take their dogs to the dog park rather than walking them in their yard or down the streets where there are lights? I mean, these kind of, you know, in my perception from trying to run a small business, it just seems very wasteful. You know, some things that you should be taking care of are roads. I mean, I've got a truck that is a big truck, and I don't drive it down Thunderbird Road between Tatum and 68th Street because it's so bouncy. So I go down a residential street, which I hate doing, but I like the things in my truck to stay in one place than bounce all over the place. In my front cul-de-sac that I live in, I can't set my garbage can on level ground because where the asphalt meets the curb, it's chewed out. So I set my garbage can there and it wants to tip over backwards. So I have to move it over here, over there. I mean, those are the kind of things that I think the city should be taking care of in, you know, and all that. It just doesn't make any sense, and I apologize that I've got 35 years of pent-up wondering why the city, who is up here spending our money, and where, I just don't understand it. I mean, I see the city guys working in the park across the street from my house, and they take a perfectly good tree and trim it to the within an inch of its life, and I go out there and I say, hey, I'm a certified arborist, you shouldn't be doing this. They continue doing it, then the tree dies, and then they come and replace the tree. It's just things like that over and over and over again that make me very frustrated. So thank you for giving me a few minutes to get this off my chest.
Sure. Thunderbird from 52nd to 64th is on the schedule next year. Right now? Okay. And then we have tripled the amount of money going into street maintenance from 2 years ago to now. So we hear, and I hear from council members about the streets, and we are putting more and more money into the streets.
Okay. I mean, it just seems, a lot of things seem senseless. And if you tried to run a business like the city is run, I mean, running buses around, I was driving down to 44th Street between McDowell and Thomas. You'd think a real busy bus route, the middle of the day. I look over, big giant bus, one person in it. It's like, how can we afford to do that? The people that take light rail, there's nobody enforcing the fees. I mean, I don't know how much we're subsidizing that, but again, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I would just like to.
Yeah, the councilman on responding about subsidy, I think it's actually, yeah, it's like about 30 to 35% covered by rider fares in the transit system. But you have to compare that to, we don't collect fares for people driving on the streets. There are other taxes that do that. But I hear you.
That's
I
could go on, but everybody has things to say.
Thank you for dropping by, and I can talk to you afterwards as well. Our last speaker this evening that I have a card for, unless somebody else is inspired, is Joseph Benesh.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you, council members. Thank you, City Manager Ed Zerker. I want to talk about the arts and the support for arts, asking for support for more arts funding. My job is as the director of Phoenix Center for the Arts. I'm also a commissioner on the Phoenix Office of Arts and Culture. And as an artist in my younger days and an arts administrator now, something I've come to realize is that one of the challenges with the arts is that the arts are everywhere. And what this means is that sometimes we miss where it engages our lives. So you've got big arts organizations. You've got your operas and your symphonies, which are great for locals, your musical instrument museums, which are great for locals, and also really, really good at attracting tourists. Whenever people travel, they tend to take in some kind of cultural experience where they're at, whether it be those museums or their sculpture gardens. But arts also has this sort of community medium effect, which is your community centers, your Thunderbird Arts Center up here, the Roosevelt Row District in downtown Phoenix, which makes top 10 national lists on a regular basis in terms of attracting millennials and entrepreneurs. And then sometimes the arts are very almost hidden. The arts create creatives. They create kids who graduate school or college and go out in the world, and maybe they don't work in the arts, but they bring a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship into their businesses, even if they don't stay in the arts. You know, sometimes we take for granted the murals that we drive by on a regular basis that might beautify our neighborhood. And the other things that these creatives make might be your food at their local restaurant, might be something that you wear that you bought, you know, at a local art shop. Of course, we know that arts create jobs, but another way that they're kind of invisible is with the public safety. I have so much respect for what police officers do day in and day out, and I agree with what our city manager said, which is kind of all of the above in the beginning. But most arts organizations have children's programming or education built into their programs. What that means is that after school, we're taking these kids in and keeping them off the street and keeping them busy. I am one of those stories. My senior year of high school, I decided I wasn't going to go. I was done with school. I could have gotten into a lot of trouble. I'd probably still be wearing Chuck Taylors. But I got cast in the school play, and that is literally what kept me in school. Now I have a job, and hopefully I contribute to society. Opinions may vary, but it's the arts that kept me in school. And the arts keep a lot of kids in school. They're not a silver bullet, but they are a cornerstone of education and engagement. So we in the arts know when we see kids every day that we're a big part of sort of interrupting some of those cycles that might, you know, lead to bad behavior. And on the other end of the age spectrum, if you will, we also support seniors and adults much the same way the senior centers do. A lot of our students are seniors or adults coming in after work, looking for a way to engage, to unwind, to meet other people in their community, so really cement that sense of community. But again, sometimes that's kind of hidden. In terms of the funding that the city gives that goes out to other organizations, we want to let you know that that's money very well spent. A lot of that goes to smaller organizations, which tend to be more nimble. We tend to watch our books very closely. The Office of Arts and Culture has some really great new neighborhood programs. So it's going to small organizations and neighborhood organizations. And the last thing I want to leave you with is that the money that's spent in the arts funding here in Phoenix is extremely well managed. I sit on that commission. I run a business myself. And the staff that the city has right now at the Phoenix Office of Arts and Culture is diligent, they're creative, they're hardworking, and it's money very, very well spent from the taxpayer point of view.
Thank you, Joseph. That's all the cards I have. I would just say, going back to Dave raised some really good questions about why we do things. We should never be wasting money on killing trees, and that sounds like we have a training issue there. But in terms of things like dog parks and others, one of the things we do in local government is we provide things that make the community better, but that no business would probably make money doing. Like a dog park, no one's going to build a dog park and be able to make money doing that. But it makes the community better to have a dog park. This community center would be a great example. No one's going to be able to make money serving seniors in a place like this that's this nice, but it's a value we have as a community to provide a place. Library is the same thing. Nobody's going to make money giving books away for free, but it's a value to all of us to have libraries. We want to do that smart. We want to spend the money wisely, and you're right on about that. We've got to be wise when we do that. But it's one of the natures of the government in terms of the local government is providing things that make the community better, but that maybe no one would individually pay for the actual cost of it. And so we all collectively pay in taxes to have things. And hopefully we are making your life better. And if we're not, we need to do a better job at that. But I really appreciate you bringing that up because those are important questions that you need to be asking of us in city management, and that's the kind of questions we get from our council members all the time too, is why are we doing that and are we doing it cost effectively? But thank you for bringing that up. Thank you all for speaking here this evening, and I'll give the last word to our council members.
Again, I want to thank everyone for coming out. This is really important. We need your input into the budget process. It's very valuable. It gives us guidance and direction, and I really thank you for being here. And I think I hear some repeating themes as we go through this, so we'll certainly take a look at those. Thank you.
I don't know that I can add to that, so thank you all for coming. We appreciate it very much.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.